I think this is the beginning of our, what we laughingly call the spring semester. My name is Peter Shane. I am the Jacob E. Davis and Jacob E. Davis II Chair in Law at the Moritz College of Law and a faculty member affiliated with the Mershon Center. I'm very excited about today's speaker. I just wanted to, in advance of introducing him, just thank Rick Herman, our past interim director, for his initial support of both our speaker today and our speaker next week. We have a program under the sort of hopeful theme of the prospects for Israeli-Palestinian reconciliation. I want to thank Chris Gelpi, our current director, for his continued support and encouragement of the program. And I want to thank Stephen Blaylock and Kyle McRae, without whom no trains run on time. And they have kept this a very smoothly oiled operation. As I said, it's my pleasure today to introduce Gadi Baltiansky as part of our the Mershon Center Speaker Series on a lecture called The Road to an Israeli-Palestinian Peace. Gadi is Director General of the Geneva Initiative in Israel, an NGO that promotes a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians through diplomatic, political, educational, and public tools, all based on an actual draft agreement that teams of Israelis and Palestinians put together starting in, well, they started working on it, I think in 2001, but it was first published in 2003. As an expert on the Middle East conflict, Gadi served as a member of the official Israeli negotiation team with Syria and the Palestinians in 1999 and as a non-official advisor to the negotiating teams both in 2007-8 and 2014-15. He has addressed many international conferences, including several UN events on issues regarding the conflict, the Israeli political arena, and public opinion. And during his years in government, he held a number of important positions, including serving as press secretary for Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, whom he was working with during the Camp David summit at the end of the Bill Clinton administration. He holds a bachelor's in international relations from Hebrew University and a master's in public administration from Harvard. And I know that he is a lifelong resident, or was a lifelong resident of Jerusalem until his recent move to Tel Aviv, proving that there's no parking problem too daunting for him to face. So with that, it's really an honor and a privilege to introduce Gadi Baltiansky.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I come from a country where we say shalom, so say shalom to all of you. Really thank you, Peter, and many thanks to all those who were involved in inviting me here. I know I should do something with this stuff, so what should I do? Just put it in? Making peace is easier than this. And thank you all for coming. Spring semester. If this is spring, I can speak about peace in the Middle East. Is more or less this. I was listening to Peter introducing me so kindly. I'm sorry my parents are not here with me because, they would have liked to hear about their son, what he's been doing. My mother would have believed it also, but the truth is that I'm really involved in this issue of the efforts of reaching peace between Israel and the Palestinians for, at least the last 18, 19 years, kind of officially. Before that, in other capacities, but really I don't want to say it's the only thing that I do for the last 19 years, although my wife thinks that it's the only thing that I do, but it's the main thing for sure. And still I have friends, and friends ask me from time to time, you're so involved in this stuff. working on this issue, going to the West Bank and meeting Palestinians and meeting Americans and meeting Chinese, meeting whoever is interested in that, and traveling to Ohio State University to speak about that, you must, and yet, of course, it's, and you fail. I mean, there's no peace. It's so hard. Maybe it's impossible to reach an agreement. You must be so frustrated. And the truth is, and I want to share with you the beginning, to be open and frank with you, yes, I am frustrated. But not because it is so hard to reach peace, because I know it is so easy. And this is the real source of frustration for me. After so many years in the room, next to the room, outside the room, going between the rooms, going to the third-party room, I'm convinced that it's not difficult. That people that are familiar with the conflict know how it will end. Some oppose it, which is, of course, legitimate. But they're not saying, no, there will be a completely different solution. No, we need to wait until somebody invents the wheel. If you ask the people that are in the circles, and not only them, an average Israeli and average Palestinian, and an American who is, familiar with the issue, people will tell you, more or less, the contours of the future agreement. And yet, we're in a way close to it, in another way so far from it. So I'll try to share with you my comments, observations, why we are close and why we are far. Sharing with you part of my experience and my lessons that I learned throughout the years. And of course, I'll be more than happy to listen to you afterwards, your comments, questions, answers, hopefully, and then we can have a conversation. But I'll start maybe with current news because, I'm a former journalist, former spokesperson, so I'm kind of addicted to news. And I just, read today the recent developments. The recent developments were speeches, because this is what's happening in my part of the world. So the Palestinian president, which is the head of the Palestinian Authority, there's no state, but still he's the president or the chairman. You know how many years Israelis and Palestinians had a fight on his title, if he's the chairman or the president, and then they agreed to call him Rais, which is the Arab word, which is not exactly president and not exactly chairman, but it's the head of, and now it's completely meaningless, of course. You argue, and maybe this is one of the lessons, by the way. You argue sometimes for hours, for days, or for years on something that in retrospective looks so stupid. But you're in the debate, you're in the negotiation table, so you need to score points and you don't want to give up. Anyway, Mahmoud Abbas gave a very tough speech the day before yesterday. Out of despair mainly, disappointed with the American approach. He had some expectations, strangely enough. Very disappointed, very frustrated with the Israeli approach, knowing that he becomes less and less popular among his own people, weak, with the internal Palestinian division, Hamas ruling Gaza. He kind of rules the West Bank with a very strong Israeli presence there. 2 months from now, less than 2 months, he will become 83 years old. So he knows that he will not stay for long in his current term. And he gave a very tough, hard-line, painful speech. And he blames Israel, and he blamed the U.S., and he said basically that there's no hope in the near future to have real, genuine negotiations. And the response of the Israeli Prime Minister was, it's a very important speech. Now the world knows how tough is Abu Mazen, is Abbas, how he's not a real partner. And the speech, Netanyahu added, serves our goals. Okay. Now I ask myself, what is the real message of Abu Mazen to his people, and what is the real message of Netanyahu to his people? For Abbas, he says, okay, no to the U.S., no to Trump, no to Israel, settlement enterprise, occupation, fine, okay. So maybe he scored some points in the next public opinion poll because he was tough. He didn't give up on anything. He blamed the entire world. Maybe he improved his personal political situation for 2 weeks, I don't know. And then Netanyahu says that such a speech serves Israel's goals. And I ask myself, what are those goals? What is the goal? To show that Abbas is not pragmatic enough? To show that, don't worry, we will not enter a negotiation process soon? So, to show that, oh, we were right all along when we said that it's their fault, that they don't recognize Israel. We won the debate. Is this a goal? I'm mentioning it because, first of all, it's the news of the recent days, but also because I feel that as time goes by, we move more and more from the field of policy to the field of spins. Everything is a spin. And we're exposed to those spins from our leaders day after day, maybe without asking ourselves enough what they are saying to us. They want to be popular. Fine, but we didn't elect them in order to be popular. Abbas was elected to be president 12 years ago. Netanyahu was elected to be prime minister 9 years ago, since then it's consecutive terms. Now, we don't care if they're popular or not, if they're strong or not. We care if they do the right thing for us. And this conflict became a kind of a game in another field. I mean, I don't know, like for me, imagine that, I don't know, the Buckeyes, your team, is playing on a hockey arena, okay? It doesn't fit. You have to win on the football field, right? You have to, I don't know, score a touchdown. You don't do it in a hockey arena. What our leaders did, they took a political process meant to achieve a political agreement to the field of PR, basically. And there, maybe they can, they can score something on hockey. I'm sure there's something to score there. But it's not a touchdown. So on PR, this guy wins a headline, this guy gets more points in a public opinion survey. But the real thing, there's no progress on that. So I just would advise to be cautious when what you hear from the region, and take it not only with a grain of salt, but with glasses that look at the PR dimension. Usually what we hear is what they want us to think about them, not what they really think serves the best interest of their party. This is the sad situation which we reached. And I saw it so many times, and this is a source of frustration for me. I saw the huge difference between what people say in the room, officials, leaders, and then what they say to the media or to their own constituencies. We have this tradition in the conflict, and maybe it's a general message on conflict from my modest experience. We have those red lines. Each side has red lines, right, when you enter negotiations. But what you sell to the public, at least in our case, is often artificial red lines. They're not for real. But this is what sells. This is what people buy. I'll give you 2 examples, okay, from our conflict, of course. For so many years, I heard Palestinian leaders, including Yasser Arafat, who was the chief negotiator, the leader of the Palestinian people during the talks in Camp David, year 2000, saying publicly, we will make sure that every single Palestinian refugee will be able to go back to his home and his village that he left in 1948 when the State of Israel was established. Left or deported from or escaped or whatever. Now, he knew, Abbas knows, that first of all, there's no such a village anymore. Doesn't exist. Second, there's no such a house anymore. There is, most of the cases, there is an Israeli town or village or kibbutz or whatever. And second, that they know that there's no Israeli leader that will ever agree to open the gates of the country to all Palestinian refugees that, according to the UNRWA, to the UN agency, because it's there also their children and their grandchildren and so, it's over 5 million people. Of course Israel will not agree to that, because then Israel will stop being Israel. We lose our character as Jewish and democratic state. And they know it. So what they say to their people, we are tough, we will make sure, we will defend, protect the right of every Palestinian refugee to come back. And then in the negotiation table, they are practical, they know that there's no such a solution, but it's hard to sign it because they already prepared the public opinion against the concession. On the Israeli case, in May 2000, I was the press secretary of the Israeli Prime Minister, then Ehud Barak, a courageous leader who made a lot of mistakes. And in May 2000 is the day of what we call reunification of Jerusalem. When in 1967, in the 6 Days War, we occupied parts of Jerusalem that were not part of Israel before. So now we have one unit. So on this day, Day of Jerusalem, we call it, like all the prime ministers before him and after him, he goes and says in the public ceremonies, I can promise you, citizens of Israel, that Jerusalem will remain unified under Israeli sovereignty forever. And everybody, gives a round of applause, standing ovation, great. And then, a month later, there was a meeting with the Palestinian leadership. I was in the room. And the Israeli Prime Minister says to Arafat then, says, talking about Jerusalem, he says, maybe under certain circumstances, if other things we agree on and so on, I'll be willing to give up on some of the Arab neighborhoods in East Jerusalem. So to divide Jerusalem. And Arafat looks at him and tells him, why are you talking like that? I know you. You don't want the Arab neighborhoods of East Jerusalem in Israel because there are more than 300,000 Palestinians. You pay them social security. You are afraid that if they will vote for the municipality, you will have a Palestinian mayor in Jerusalem instead of a Jewish mayor. So you want to get rid of us. So for you, it's not even a concession. So why are you selling it as a concession? So Barak said, but I have my constituency, I have the public. Everybody wants a unified city under Israeli sovereignty. So I'm thinking, of course everybody wants it because you said it to them. You, like every other Israeli, you swear in the United Jerusalem forever and ever. What is this United Jerusalem forever and ever? It includes more than 300,000 Palestinians in places where never an Israeli went to, refugee camps. There is a wall in Jerusalem that Israel built because of security reasons. The wall is in the middle of Jerusalem. It's not outside Jerusalem. It divides some Arab neighborhoods from other Arab neighborhoods. Nobody goes to the other side of the wall, and it's still part of Jerusalem. If I was last Sunday in Ramallah, I went from Jerusalem. You cross a crossing point named Kalandia. Okay, it's like a border control, basically. You cross it, you drive and drive and drive and drive, and you're still in Jerusalem. All of a sudden you're in Ramallah, but it's like the same. You don't feel the difference. But you are in Jerusalem and you see all Palestinians, everything is in Arabic. The Palestinian Authority cannot go there because it's part of Jerusalem. The Jerusalem municipality, and to collect the garbage, they don't go there because it's the other side of the wall and there's no Israelis there. It's almost like no man's land. But when we say unified Jerusalem, we mean also this. Why? Because it's a popular slogan. That's it. And those are, now, in order to reach a compromise, the Palestinians know that they will that they will not get a return of all refugees to the state of Israel. They know that they don't want it, they don't need it, they don't want to be part of a Jewish state, and Israel will never allow it. And we know that there's no such a thing as an agreement without having the Arab East Jerusalem as capital of Palestine. And still, we hear those slogans day after day. What we try to do, and as Peter said, I'm part of a group named the Geneva Initiative. It started with a group of us, official negotiators from both sides, who in 2001 saw the failure of the talks. We didn't reach an agreement. And then we decided to prove to ourselves, first of all, that an agreement is doable. And then we started with this, I would say, track 1.5. There's track 1, which is the official track. There's track 2, which is civil societies. And here it was 1.5. Because on the Palestinian side, there was some of the people were still officials. On our side, we were former because our prime minister lost the elections. And we explored the possibility of reaching an agreement on all core issues: borders, Jerusalem, refugees, security. Now, for people who don't represent the government, it's of course much easier. That's the importance, in my view, of track 2, of civil societies, of NGOs. They can afford something that governments cannot. I remember in the preparation for the talks, the official talks, in 2000, also in 2015, governments approached civil society or experts, university experts included, asking them, what will be your solution for Jerusalem? You can say whatever you want. I cannot say it. Because once I write a paper, it may be leaked, and then, or somebody will see it, they are planning to divide Jerusalem. Now, we know that we need to prepare ourselves to a solution which divides Jerusalem, let's say, an example, or that evacuates settlements, okay? We cannot evacuate settlements from one day to another. We need plans how to do it, to prepare ourselves, what will be the economic impacts, the social aspects, I don't know how it will be done. We need someone to do this work. The government cannot do it, because then it means, you already decided to evacuate settlements. You have an official paper, so you use experts, civil society people, NGOs. So we had the liberty of going to places where governments maybe would like to go, but it's very hard for them because of the public dimension. And this is how we reached the the model known as the Geneva Initiative, which is a detailed blueprint with solutions to all those issues that I mentioned. I don't want to bore you with the details, the issues themselves, but again, everybody who follows, and many of you follow the conflict, know that the basic concept, two-state solution, the border based on 1967 lines, but not identical, with land swaps, so Israel will be able to annex big settlement blocks and will give back empty land in exchange. Palestine without an army, but with a strong security police force, with international, multinational military presence, with two capitals in Jerusalem. The Arab Jerusalem will be the capital of Palestine, the Jewish Jerusalem capital of Israel, with a solution to the refugee problem that is based on their return to the state of Palestine and compensation, and with a mutual recognition and declaration on the end of the conflict. Those are the parameters of the Geneva Initiative. Those are the parameters of a future agreement, and this is what has been negotiated since then, including in the last round of negotiations that took place with Secretary John Kerry in 2014 and 15. They took the Geneva book, which with all the annexes and details on everything, it's already 500 pages, and it was on the table. And I know that it was on the table, on the American table, the Palestinian table, and the Israeli table, and they used it as a reference, because this is the reference that exists for a model of this kind of peace agreement. I think, and this again, it's my lesson. I'm not an academician. Many people here in the room know much better than me, but from my personal experience, if I try to think why we succeeded in reaching a very detailed agreement, drafting a solution to every single problem where governments failed. So first, we don't bear the responsibility, of course. It's easier for us because we don't represent anyone. We can, go ahead. We don't take too many risks, while leaders take national, political, and even personal risks. If you think about President Sadat that was assassinated, about Prime Minister Rabin that was assassinated, you think that they're taking all kinds of risks. Against us, there were demonstrations, and some people called us on both sides traitors and so on. But it's not something that you can, not a real danger. So you have this liberty. But more than that, when I try to analyze the negotiations on this, the non-official negotiations on this non-official agreement, I reached the conclusion that we had two keys for the success. One is that we dealt with the future and not with the past. Israelis and Palestinians will never agree on the past. I mean, each one of us has his own narratives. We heard different stories from our parents, from our uncles and neighbors, from our textbooks in school, whatever. We will never change our past. But if there's one thing that we can agree upon is the future. This is easy because it didn't pass yet. We can build it together. We agree with it. So the Geneva Initiative it's an advantage and a disadvantage, and I will elaborate in a minute on the disadvantage, but the agreement itself focuses on practical solutions to the problems. Just a recipe for the future. What to do exactly with security, with the settlement, with the border. Doesn't deal at all with the past. Whose fault is it? Who to blame? What happened in 48? What happened there? Nothing of this kind. So this is one component, one key in my view. The second one is that I think that we negotiated this Geneva Initiative longer than we expected because it was very hard to meet. It was in the midst of the second Intifada with terrorist attacks, military operations. You're not allowed to go to Palestine. They're not allowed to come to Israel. And because we argued on the details. So it took 2 years till 2003. But all of a sudden, in 2003, we said to ourselves, okay, it's time to decide. I mean, we have 99% of it. Either we go for it, or we stop. We will not continue with this exercise. We created an artificial moment of truth. In my view, without creating moment of truth, leaders will not take the decision. They will postpone it, the decision, because the decision is painful. I'm not underestimating the difficulty for a leader to take such a decision. It's, you know, I don't know, I don't want to, anyway, I had to, my doctors told me like 3-4 months ago that I have to go through a small surgery. My first question was, do I have to do it now or can I postpone it? Because if I can postpone it, I prefer. Why not? It's a surgery, it's not such a big thing. But if you want, and leaders, for them, they have to make the surgery. I mean, I think that the patient, the Israelis and Palestinians who are suffering from the disease are ready to go through the surgery, through the operation. The doctors are afraid of doing it, in our case. And if they can postpone it, they prefer. After the holidays, after the spring, after there is a new president in the US, after there's elections in Israel, after something happens in the Palestinians, there's always, you can always find a reason or excuse why to postpone something. And since it's a complicated, painful decision that nobody took before you, why you should be the one and taking all the risks? If you want, you can postpone it, you postpone it. In our case, because it's civil society, because it's track 2, because we don't bear the responsibility, we decided to create this moment of truth. And in my view, in my talks with Americans, American officials and others, I always tell them, create this artificial moment of truth. Don't impose a solution on the parties. Don't tell them what to do. Just bring them to this juncture, to this crossroads where they have to take a decision. Either or. Go left, go right, go straight, go backward, whatever. But make them take a decision. Without that, I think it is very hard. I said that it's maybe a disadvantage, one of the disadvantages of the Geneva Initiative, the fact that we dealt only with the future, not with the past. At the time, we didn't think so, obviously. We thought that it's an advantage because it enabled us to reach a solution, and we sold to the public something positive. But what happened over the years, since we didn't reach a real formal official solution, is that when we go to people, we hear skeptical people, we hear doubts, we hear opposition that don't have to do with the actual model. At the beginning, we sent the Geneva Initiative by mail, not by email, but by mail, to every single household in Israel. Okay? And the Palestinians sent it as an insert with every newspaper that was sold or distributed in the West Bank and Gaza. So at the beginning, and then we established NGOs, one Israeli, one Palestinian, one based in Tel Aviv, one based in Ramallah, and with a branch in Gaza. And we started a journey to both societies, telling them there is a partner on the other side, and there is a solution. And we need to negotiate, and we need to really push our governments to go for a real peace process, a genuine one, trying to reach a solution, knowing that governments are always much smarter than regular people like us. They are not. So they will get a better solution, but we have our own modest suggestion. And then people would ask us, okay, but how can you find a solution to this specific, complicated, delicate, symbolic issue? So we said, we have here the Geneva Initiative model. Please take a look, Article 4, Chapter 5, whatever. So at the beginning, people came with those booklets with the marker. They marked And they asked about this sentence, this detail. Fine. It was after the failure of the official negotiations. People spoke about the core issues, but exactly where the border will be, what will happen with this settlement, what will be exactly the solution on it. But as the years passed and people were disappointed, and with Netanyahu as a prime minister who doesn't support this kind of solution, and with people explaining all the time why not instead of how yes. We try to say how it can be done. The tendency is today to explain why not. Because it's always because of them, of course, on both sides. It's always there. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they are such and such, and because of that we don't reach an agreement, there's no point in even talking to them and negotiating and making a concession because they are such and such, and then you don't do it and you don't reach progress, and you say to yourself, oh, I was right from the beginning. And people started to doubt the intention of the other side. And even going back to today's news or yesterday's news, what Netanyahu said after Abu Mazen's speech, he said, it means that they don't want to make peace with us, not because of the border, not because of the settlements, because they don't want us here in the region. They don't recognize our right to be here from the first place. And this is the narrative that penetrates into the Israeli society, while in the Palestinian society, people would say, come on, Abu Mazen and Saib al-Ekat and all those old guys from the old guard, you're selling us this two-state solution. But the Israelis don't want it. They're cheating. They're lying to you. We know them. How do we know? Because they are building settlements, because they build a wall in our backyard, because they don't recognize us as a state, because they don't. They always find reasons why not. And then we realize that the crisis is so deep, the gap is so deep that we need to deal with the past, actually. And to try to show Israelis and Palestinians not only that an agreement is possible, but that peace is possible. When you introduce a political model, you introduce a peace agreement. This is what we did in Geneva Initiative. But actually we introduced the agreement, the recipe for an agreement, not a recipe for peace. An agreement, a political diplomatic agreement with solutions, people can sign it, fine. It doesn't make peace between the peoples. So over the last few years, we now completed the project about reconciliation. Originally, we started it thinking about the day after. Okay, one day they will sign the peace treaty, what will happen the day after? How to build peace between the two nations. We signed peace with Israel, signed peace with Egypt. We have an embassy in Cairo, they have an embassy in Tel Aviv. But there's no real peace between Egyptians and Israelis. You will not see Israeli tourists in the pyramids or Egyptians making business in Israel, whatever. The same with Jordan. There is an agreement, but there are no wars, so it's great. And people don't die, which is, first intention of a peace treaty, the first goal. But there's no real peace between the people. So we thought, okay, let's prepare as we prepared the draft for an agreement, let's prepare a draft for the day after. On issues like the right to know, okay? People want to know what happened. And some people want to hide what happened and not to talk about it. It's delicate. How do you address it? We negotiated it, again, informal, and a student of yours that studied in this university, that's why I gave him his example. And he speaks about it openly, that's why I allow myself to quote it, and he allowed me to. But I'll give you his example. He was on the Palestinian team that negotiated with us this agreement on reconciliation, which was not published yet. And he says, we want to know. We want the papers, we want the documents. And you, Israel, you have all the documents of what happened 70 years ago with the Palestinians. And I said, but you know, it's in our archives. Maybe there are things that are problematic for us. We cannot give you open access to all our archives. And he says, you know, my grandfather, he says, was the last mayor of a Palestinian town named Majdal in the southern part of Israel. Today it doesn't exist. Today there is an Israeli city there, the city of Ashkelon. It's close to the Gaza Strip. And his grandfather was the last mayor. And he says, you know, I want to know, what were his last decisions before they all left, or some of them were deported to Gaza? What was debated in the city council? You have all the papers. I want to know. Like me, there are many others. Give me an access. Give me something. It's very important for me. Or another Palestinian partner said that he knows, and we all know, that there are books, many books, that belonged to Palestinians in 1948. And they left their homes with the books in the homes. Then Jews or Israelis entered the homes, and they saw the books, they donated it to the library. They are in the library, but originally they belong to someone else. They want the books, at least to know where are the books. And many examples like that. There are many events on which we have different narratives. We cannot go and investigate now every single event. But if we take 2 or 3 major events, just for one party to know the narrative of the other, not to agree on one narrative. We will never agree on one narrative. But if we get the right mechanism, so people will know what's the narrative of the other. That's all. And we deal with acknowledgements, even with mutual apologies. And with non-recurrence, how to make sure that terrible things that happened in the past will not happen in the future, with reforms in education, against incitement, media, institutional reforms, and many other steps. And we just recently completed this work, and we're thinking maybe it's for the day after. But then, after talking with officials also, we realized that it can also help during the negotiations. Why? Because for the Palestinians, for example, understand that an Israeli government will not allow all refugees to come to Israel. But if they will get a recognition that there is such a problem, that there was such a suffering, and we are sorry for the suffering. Maybe we don't apologize, for sure we don't apologize that we established a state, but we can show sympathy. We can understand. Maybe then it's more important for them than to get another, I don't know, $1,000 for compensation. And the same for Israelis. Israelis will need to make a concession on Jerusalem, okay? Even on holy places in Jerusalem. If the Palestinians will sign a paper saying that they recognize the attachment of the Jewish people to the land, that we're not there by coincidence, that Jerusalem means something for us, then we will be more willing to make the compromise. Because, okay, now they know why we're there. And we know why they are there. So it can facilitate, it can make the decision-making process easier if you describe the day after peace and not only the day of signing the actual agreement. I don't want to take too much of your time and leave enough time for questions, but maybe 2 or 3 last points that I would like to make. One is, I think if you follow the news from our region or you read about it or you speak about it, I think one has to take into consideration and bear in mind that nowadays both societies, Israelis and Palestinians, are mainly driven by fear, not by hope, which is a very sad and tragic development in my view, because fear paralyzes. But today, Israel is a very strong country with a very strong army and with, superpower in technology and many other things. And yet, if you ask Israelis, what is the biggest concern in a compromise with the Palestinians, the answer will be security. We are afraid of threats. We need to take care of ourselves. What will happen with the missile? What will happen if a terrorist wants to come to Israel? It's fear. It's the fear factor. And we can explain it, and we can talk about it if you want, but the fact that also we have a prime minister that genuinely is driven by fear and not by hope, and it is influence on the people, and our history has influence on that, and many other things. But we are being led by fear. And the Palestinians are afraid of everything that is interim or small, or because, those Jews, their real intention is to kick us out to the desert. The real plan is to transfer the Palestinians because they want the entire land, because the entire land was promised to the Jews by her, let's say, by her, I don't know exactly, him, her, you choose, but it's the promised land of the Jews. So what, and each side can prove, of course, the argument. You can always prove. If you have an argument, you will find the proof. So for Israel, there are Israel that can prove that the Palestinians want to send us to the sea, and they can prove that we want to send them to the desert. And by that, you are paralyzed, and you say to yourself, okay, let's make sure that things don't become worse. Good enough. And they are not driven by hope. Let's make things better. Which is not a recipe for succeed in my view. And maybe the second point, I still would like to suggest something operational, practical, that I think maybe can work in order to, I think when I was first invited to speak here, I think the headline was something about 5 years, right? How can we reach the 5-year path? Okay. So I'll take 5 minutes to describe the 5 years. Don't worry, it won't be the opposite. Ideally, I would like to see the leaders of both parties sitting, negotiating an agreement, and reaching a two-state solution agreement with the contours and the parameters that I mentioned before. I think it's in the best interest of the Palestinians because they deserve a state with freedom, with dignity, with hope. And it's the best interest for Israel because we deserve a state that will be a democratic homeland for the Jewish people with a solid Jewish majority which live in peace and security with our neighbors. And this you cannot reach but with the partition of the land. It was always been the plan since the 30s of the last century by the British and then by Anglo-American Committee and by the UN partition plan. And because you have one piece of land, both parties, both peoples have a strong attachment to it. So either you share everything or you divide it. To share everything, for us as Israelis, is not a good solution because we will not be the majority. We will not control the place. We will not have the key to this country. And the entire idea of Zionism is to have a key to one place on earth. So a Jew from Russia or Argentina or Paris or Cleveland will be able, if he wants or she wants, to come to this place. It's hers. It's him. This is our lesson from history, that we want a state. If we become a minority in our state and we are a democracy, we will not control it. We'll be a minority. So it's against the basic idea of our ideology. If we still control them as a minority, then we're not a democratic state anymore. And there are all kinds of names to such states where a minority rules a majority. I don't want to live in such a state. So the rational conclusion is partition of the land. It is not the fulfillment of all my dreams. It is not the fulfillment of their dreams. But I know that if I fulfill my dream, it will become my neighbor's nightmare, basically, and vice versa. And then the conflict will continue. And it's not about reaching justice. I feel I'm not a lawyer or something like that. I have a lot of respect to people that deal with law and justice. Justice for me is a very strong value. One of my sons, his name in Hebrew is basically justice. But I think that if someone seeks real justice in this context, he will never reach peace. Because for a Palestinian whose parents were born in the city of Jaffa, Tel Aviv, okay? It's today Tel Aviv. And his grandparents and I don't know how many generations lived there. For him not to be able to go back there and live there is something which is not just. I can understand it. And for Jews who for generations lived in the city of Hebron, and our forefathers are buried there, and we have a strong spiritual, religious, cultural attachment to this place. For us not to be, for us to be able to live in Columbus, Ohio, but not to be able to live in Hebron, is not just. It's not the meaning of word justice. But I know that if we will allow every Palestinian to live in Jaffa and every Jew to live in Hebron, it will be a nightmare. There will be no peace. That's for sure. So we need to be fair, but we need to be cautious with the ultimate goal of justice. At the end of the day, I cannot think of something more just than peace. So in a way, I guess we address the issue of justice as well. So I wish we would have the leaders on both sides that will enter tomorrow morning a real, genuine peace process and eventually sign the deal, as your president called it, the ultimate deal. I didn't say the ultimate president, I said the ultimate deal, but it's your president. I don't interfere in domestic politics of others. And I was very pleased to see that President Trump, said that for him it's a goal, that he wants to achieve peace between Israel and Palestinians. He stated as one of his priorities. And it still is in a way, a reason for hope for me. Because, if a superpower wants to really go for it and try to help both parties, it's great for us. But the situation today is that the Palestinians lost, if they had all confidence in this American administration, Israel is not willing to pay the price, the Israeli government is not willing to pay the price that is needed in order to reach the ultimate deal. And we need to think of something else. So to do nothing is not something else, in my view. The vacuum is dangerous, leads to frustration, violence, bloodshed. There's no doubt about that. So doing nothing, for me, out of selfish reasons, I live there, I have three children, I cannot afford doing nothing. So what I would suggest is something to think about. It's something that was a part of the roadmap which was presented by President Bush in 2001. So it's Republican, it's not Democratic. It's President Trump can take a look at it. Both parties actually accepted it at the time with reservations. It's a roadmap with several stages. At the end, there is there's a final agreement. But the second stage of it speaks about a Palestinian state with provisional borders. In my view, this is something that we can do, and we don't have to wait 5 years for it. It has a, ideally, we would like to have something that both parties agree to. But if there was such a something, we already had an agreement. So the second best is to have something that both parties don't agree. Because if one party agrees and the other disagrees, it's a recipe for a failure, for sure. You cannot afford it. Today, a Palestinian state with provisional borders is something that both sides have problems with it. The Israeli government will have problems with the establishment of a Palestinian state within the West Bank, even if you don't have to evacuate settlements. To have a Palestinian state, you will have political problems, coalition, blah, blah, blah. The Palestinians will have a problem with this because they say, okay, you call it provisional, but we know the Israelis, this provisional will last forever. It's a small country, we need Jerusalem as a capital, we need a real state, not something provisional. So I think that those concerns which are legitimate can be addressed. Israel's concerns can be addressed with the security guarantees, that this state will not be a terror state or something like that. And the Palestinian concerns can be addressed by international or American guarantees for a timetable and for the parameters of the endgame. Telling them, okay, this is provisional, but 5 years, 5 years. In 5 years, you have to negotiate and reach the final status agreement, which will be based on the lines of 67. Meanwhile, you have a state. But we are telling you in a Security Council resolution or in an American statement or whatever, that this will be, this is not provisional. And meanwhile, you will have two states negotiating the borders between them, which is something not unprecedented. And you will not talk to an organization, the PLO, who is the official partner now, official representative for the Palestinian people. You will talk to a state with an elected government, so you don't have Hamas in Gaza and the Fatah in the West Bank. You will have elections, you will have a government, you will have a state. Everybody speaks about recognizing Palestine. Israel will be the first to recognize the new state of Palestine. There will be mutual recognition. And during this time, when we have two states, so at least you inject some hope to both parties, and you negotiate based on the parameters that were declared by the international community. In my view, it's my second best. It's my fallback. But it's better than nothing. It's better than waiting for the next round of violence, which will come. And I'll end with that. Today, young Israelis don't care so much about the conflict because the economy is doing great, high-tech, they don't really pay a price. And the fact that they don't care about it is very dangerous, in my view, because it will blow up in their faces. And Palestinian youth are not talking about those core issues, borders, refugees, settlements, security. Not anymore. They said, it's not for us. What we want is our rights, our political rights. We want to vote. We want to have an impact on our own future. And this is, a legitimate mood, which is also dangerous because it will lead to violence against their own leaders, against Israel. It will explode. It starts here and there. So in order to prevent those explosions, we need to suggest something else, which is short of the ultimate deal, unfortunately, but at least paves kind of a road to a peaceful agreement and to a better future for both peoples. I think that in order to pave this road, Israelis and Palestinians are not strong enough, are not courageous enough, for sure our leaders. And we need a little bit help of our friends. And since you came today on this weather, and you even bother to listen to me for the last hour or so, almost. I'm sorry for that. I already consider you as friends, as true friends of our cause. Whatever your view is, you're interested, and we need those voices. We need this interest. Indifference is our enemy. So whenever you have the opportunity to raise your voice, to write something, to read something, to talk to someone, to show interest, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know if it helps you, but I can promise you 100% it helps us. It helps us knowing that people have interest, that people care, that we are not alone. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. Yeah, I heard that it's a free country, so. Yes, please, if you can please introduce yourself just before.
My name is Gadi. I'm wondering if the Geneva Initiative, is that available that people can read? Is it published someplace or just kind of like and my second question, specifically, how does the Geneva Initiative treat Gaza? Is it just considered, will it just be part of the West Bank and one country or
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, no, thank you. So to the first question, of course it's available. It's online. It's geneva-accord.org. You'll have there the full text. You'll have, after we finish the original agreement, which is about 50 pages, there is an executive summary, though, in the beginning. Don't worry, you can read only the executive summary. We added annexes on all kind of technical issues, environment, water, infrastructure, the exact security arrangements, the management of holy sites, and then we have a book of 500 pages. So I arrived just a couple of days ago, and I'm leaving back tomorrow home, so I didn't bring with me all the books, but they're all online, and you can, you'll see the maps, you will see pictures, you will see the details, the annexes, whatever you are interested in. You can just geneva-accord.org. If you Google Geneva Initiative, Israel, Palestine, or something, you'll find it, and then you will find also there our activities, what we do. I didn't come here to sell our NGO or to ask for donations, but so I didn't talk about what we do. But basically, our Palestinian colleagues and we are busy day in and day out on trying to promote the idea of negotiations and of the two-state solution. You can all find it in the website. Regarding your second question, when we reached the Geneva Initiative, it was before Hamas took over Gaza. So back then it was one entity, the West Bank and Gaza. We suggested to have a corridor between the West Bank and Gaza. They are separated. A corridor that will link them. We suggest that this corridor will be mainly underground, like a tunnel. It's not such a long tunnel. There are many tunnels around the world that are much longer than that. That you will be able to enter this tunnel only in Gaza and the West Bank. So in Israel, you're not able to enter. It's only for Palestinians or for those who come from Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So they can have roads, trains, infrastructure, gas, whatever. And Gaza will be part of the Palestinian state, yes, for sure. There's one Palestinian state with the West Bank, Gaza, and with the corridor under their control that will link them. Since then, what happened is that Hamas took over, and Israel withdrew unilaterally from Gaza. It was Prime Minister Ariel Sharon then who did it. By the way, when he did it, his explanation was, and he said it in an interview to the New York Times, actually to William Safire, but also many times in Israel, his assistant said it, that the reason was the Geneva Initiative. He opposed the Geneva Initiative. When we launched it, it got a lot of support, within the Israeli society and within the international community, leaders. The president here, President Bush, didn't meet us, but he congratulated us, but the Secretary of State met us, and many leaders around the world, and it was a big thing. And Sharon was afraid of it. So he had to do something in order to prevent it, according to his school of thought. And what he did in order to prevent it is a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. He said, don't worry, Americans, Europeans, whatever, I'm taking care of it, but my own way. My own way is without negotiations with the Palestinians, without an agreement, without bilateralism, because then it may lead to an agreement that he opposes to. That's why he withdrew unilaterally from Gaza. Hamas took over, and now there is such a split. But at the end of the day, there are one people, and there should be one state. Yes, please. You know, first of all, the United Nations did it on November 29th, 1947. The partition resolution was about two states, and I'm quoting the language of the resolution, one Jewish state and one Arab state. You know, in parentheses, because you hear about it from time to time. Netanyahu demands the Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They made out of it a big thing. They should admit that we're a Jewish state. So it's such a big thing that Abu Mazen says, no, I'm not willing to do it. You know, because if you want it, pay for it. It's such a big deal for you, then you have to pay for it. Why should I give it to you for free? In the Geneva Initiative, by the way, we have I think it's a very good formula of mutual recognition of the two states as homeland for the two peoples and the right of the Jewish people and the Palestinian people to stay to. So when John Kerry met Abu Mazen in 2014, he told him Netanyahu wants a recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. Do you agree to the formula in the Geneva Initiative? So there's no problem. Abu Mazen told him, you know, give me the entire Geneva Initiative. Don't take one sentence and make me agree to it. But it's again an example of the spins. If you go to YouTube, okay, in YouTube you will see Yasser Arafat talking about the Jewish state. He said that Israel is a Jewish state. What's the big deal? But it's propaganda. Netanyahu wanted it again as an excuse why not to advance. Abu Mazen, he's tough, he will not give up, give in to Netanyahu's demands, and we're stuck. But that's in parentheses. But that's the resolution 47 spoke about two states. The Arab state should have been Palestine. They rejected it because at the time they thought that Jews, you know, who are those Jews that are coming to our homes, our villages, saying that they were here 2,000 years ago? Thank you very much. I really missed you 2,000 years. I'll give you a hug. I'll give you a kiss. Take my home. Take my land. It was not their reaction, surprisingly enough. Instead, the reaction was to oppose, to fight, and to try to prevent it. Only years after, when they realized that Israel is there to stay and we are strong and we're millions, we will not disappear, as they will not disappear, they adopted the concept of two states, actually in 1988. It took them 40 years. So the resolution is there. Palestine as a state was recognized by 138 countries in the world. Okay? It's all Africa, Latin America, Asia, Sweden, not the other European countries, Russia, China. But then what? Okay, so they're recognized. So what? It doesn't change anything on the ground. So another resolution or another recognition will not change things on the ground. What I'm saying that a state with provisional borders agreed upon between the parties can be adopted by the UN, for sure, as a resolution. And then the UN can say, this is provisional, temporary, in 5 years or 3 years, or whatever, you need to get to a final agreement, which will be based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 67, security, mutual recognition, whatever, Jerusalem. I think if it's adopted by the UN, it will be very powerful, significant, and will send the right message to both peoples. But it has to be something concrete, not just another vague statement. No, the UN is full of statements that didn't change anything on the ground. That's why it should be more concrete and practical. Yes, please.
There's been a lot of talk recently about the end of the two-state solution, which I'm sure you're asked about all the time. Both many Palestinians and many Israelis consider the factors for one-state already, and even as an ideal, many Palestinians and Israelis, for different reasons, are looking for a one-state solution. Now, when people like you, who have been invested in the two-state solution for so many years, are asked about this, the answer that's commonly given is, what can I say? The two-state solution is the only workable solution. I've got no choice but to continue working towards it. I don't know if that would be your answer. But can I ask you a slightly different question, which is there any state of affairs that would come about where you would say, oh, I guess it's over. This two-state solution is now impossible?
First of all, you're 100% right. Many people are saying that the two-state solution is dead, that's the end of it, and one-state solution, and as you said, we live in maybe in one state, but not in a one-state solution. We live in a one-state problem. I'm not saying that we cannot live in a one state. I'm just saying that it's not a solution. It's a one-state non-solution. Because each side will not give up on his basic beliefs. Now, I'm Israeli, I'm a Zionist, and for me, it's not that I believe in the two-state solution as an ideology. I'm telling it all the time to my Palestinian friends. I don't mind what will happen on the other side of the border, as long as it's not an existential threat on Israel or a base for terrorism or something like that. But if you Palestinians decide to be, part of Guatemala, or Costa Rica. Costa Rica is better because Costa Rica is the only country that doesn't have an army. So Costa Rica is a great country. They don't have an army, and they have this rule that they always will have more teachers than policemen. It's great in my view. But if the Palestinians decide they want to be part of Costa Rica, or part of Jordan, or a county in, in Ohio State, I don't mind. I am not fighting for the Palestinian independence. It's their business. I'm not telling them what to do. So it's not a two-state solution that drives me. It's what will happen to my state. I want a democratic state with a solid Jewish majority that can be the homeland of the Jewish people. I know that if I'll include the 2.8 million Palestinians that are living now in the West Bank, the 350,000 Palestinians that live in East Jerusalem, and the 2 million Palestinians that live in Gaza, I'm a minority. I don't want it. So I want a border between us and them. What will happen there, in a minute, I want to, it's a very important point, so I want to make it clear. It's up to them. So I'm not addicted to the two-state solution. I'm just looking for a border to my own state. There are many, and maybe more and more, as you said, Israelis and Palestinians that say, okay, why not a one-state solution? But they talk about two different things, completely different. The Palestinians who talk about a one-state solution, they talk about a one state with equal rights to all, who will vote, who will get elected. Why not? For the Palestinians, this was their original ideology. The PLO Charter speaks about one state, democratic, secular state. The Israelis don't talk about, the Israelis will talk about one state like parts of the government today, the people that ideologically don't want, and of course it's more than legitimate, to give up on the land because it's holy land, because it's Jewish land, because it's fine. So they say, okay, but we'll have one state. And the Palestinians, they will have their kind of autonomy. They will take care of garbage collecting, I don't know, but they will not vote for the Knesset, for the Israeli parliament. So in a way, they will be second-degree citizens in this one state. So they are talking about two different states completely when they speak about the one-state solution. So what it basically is, it's a one state without a solution, which means a kind of a Bosnia, a continuation of the conflict, bloodshed, death, and after we pay a price, and after people will die, we will go back to the same conclusion from the beginning, that everyone reached from the beginning, that we need to make a partition of the land. It just makes more sense. That's all. Yes?
In the Middle East, we have levels where you have majority Muslims. Most of the Christians have agreed ultimately
Right.
and it worked out. I'm not saying that the mighty Israel will bring itself so much down that it would have more direct. I'm just saying what you say, that the two-state, thing has been going on for so long that a lot of people are really kind of getting off their shit. The other thing, when you go into the illustrious too, when you look at the Israeli Day Parade, that's a Jewish state in Tel Aviv. You have Hasidics who are stabbing. They are so offended by what's going on in Tel Aviv. We, you know, Jews have lived in the Middle East for centuries. And you know how the Jews were treated in what you call the Arab world. You know very well how the Jews were treated in Egypt, how they were treated in Algeria, until today. And you calling the separation of Jerusalem by the Arab side and the Israeli side, you should say the Christian Muslim side and the Jewish side. Let's clarify that, because you know what? There's a lot of very fine Arab Jews who are in tears to lose their identity as Arab Jews, who have lived there for centuries and they have brothers that are Muslim.
Thank you for this point. I'll answer with 2 points. One, I am cautious. You know, there are people that think differently, obviously, and I don't have a monopoly on being right. But my view is that to turn the conflict into a religious conflict will be counterproductive. As long as it is a political conflict, I think we can solve it. Once it becomes a religious conflict with religious definitions, I think it will be harder. Because, you know, in the Bible you can find everything that you want. In the Quran you can find everything that you want. And it's not up to us, it's up to him, her, whatever. It's a divine, it's then you give room for fanatics from both sides. And it has a religious dimension for sure. And I respect religion. And I respect religious people. But I think we should try to keep it as a conflict that is a national conflict and not a religious one. And the second point is that I think Jews and Muslims and Christians can live together. And today in Israel per se, without the West Bank and Gaza, there are more than 1 million Arabs, non-Jews. Most of them Muslims, some of them Christians. And grosso modo, basically, there is a coexistence. Moreover, I think that once we will have the two-state solution, there will be a lot of cooperation between those two states, including maybe, you know, free movement, access, because people live here and work there, people sell this, and the roads will be the same, and the train will go from here to there, and we will, I don't know, transfer the gas from the Mediterranean to Jordan through the railroad or whatever. But in order to be happily married, we need a kind of a divorce before. And then we can have the honeymoon. But But today, the tension, the hatred, the fear, mainly the fear from each other, the mistrust are so big that we need a border. Maybe one day there will be one state. Maybe there will be a confederation of two states. You know, there are political scientists here in the room know better than me. There are solutions. And it's not black or white. And since it's a small place and we know each other, Israelis and Palestinians, my generation, we know each other. The young generation don't know each other that way. Palestinians, the young generation, don't come to Israel, don't have a permit. Israelis don't go at all. I mean, they go when there are soldiers. But we are not that different from each other. If I look at other Arabs or Arab countries with other tradition, history, culture, with the Palestinians we have much more in common. And we know some of them, you know, served time in Israeli prisons. Many of them. There's no Palestinian family without one that was at a certain time in Israeli prison. One of the effects of that is that many of them know Israelis, because in the prison they were Israelis, and many of them learn Hebrew and learn our history. And some of them left a prison and went back to terrorist acts and, you know, violence. But some, I would say many of them, became the strongest peace activists. Our partners in the Geneva Initiative, some of them served a lot of time in Israeli prisons. And they know us, and they know that they can live with us together. I asked one of my partners during the negotiations on the Geneva Initiative model, and we were towards the end, and I became kind of friend with him. My age, also 3 kids and so on, and speaks fluent Hebrew. And he served 17 years in Israeli prison. And I asked him, before concluding it, I asked him, Kadula, his name is Kadula Faris. I asked him, he was Minister of Prisoner Affairs, by the way. Today he's the head of the Prisoners Club. I asked him, Kadula, why are you signing this Geneva Initiative model with me? Well, I mean, my interest is clear. I want a state with a solid Jewish majority. I want security. Why are you signing it? If you will wait 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 2 generations, whatever, you will be the majority. You will say one man, one vote. The international community will have to support it in the names of democracy and whatever. And you will take over the entire thing. So why not you wait? He gave me the following answer. He said, you know, I served 17 years in the Israeli prison. I know you Israelis. I came to know you. You are tough. You will not give up. You will not give up this Zionist enterprise. You will not give up this state of your own. You will not give us this full right so we'll become a majority. So we'll have to continue to fight. That's what will happen if we don't now reach a 2-state solution. And I have 3 kids, he said. And the meaning of not reaching an agreement for me is that those kids, in the best case scenario, they will have the miserable life that I had in prison. And I can imagine worst case scenarios, where they'll have to kill or get killed because of this conflict. And he said, I don't want this future for my children. I want them to live a better life than me. And since I know you, I know that the way for a better life for my children is through an agreement with you. And in a way, this is the way I feel. I would like to have an ideal world. But in order to have a better life, a more secure one, more democratic one, a more moral one for my children, I know the road goes through an agreement with the Palestinians. And that's why I work on it every day, and that's why I will modestly also ask you to support the cause of peace in the Middle East. I think we are okay. please. Yeah. I'm just.
I think the problem with the Geneva, by the way, I'm Paco Bataller.
Excuse me?
Uh,
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
I'm Paco Bataller, I'm retired. As you know,
¿Podemos hablar español o no?
suppose.
Ah.
Good.
Oh, okay. I just want. Okay.
I'm retired from the Foreign Service of the European Union.
Okay.
I think the problem with the Geneva Initiative
Mhm.
is irrational. But this coupled with something that you said, right, that both sides are feeling like fear. And coupled also with leaders on both sides, which don't care about reasonability or rationality, they care about other things, makes the problem very difficult. And in your presentation, you have not carried the discussion to the end, because you have identified clearly that something has to happen. But who is going to bring that to happen?
Mhm.
The international community has tried 20 years ago to bring both sides together, at a conference, etc. But in the end, things get diluted. And I think there are so many other issues on the world scene that in the end, and the problem has been going on for so long, that for a long time it was hoped that it would be the international community that would force both parties either to sit down or to impose a solution. But this seems to be out of the, it's not the card on the table.
Mhm. Mhm.
So with this, I mean, all the desiderata, all these ideas that we should or they should are crucial. But the point is that as you have, I mean, the Geneva Initiative in the end was a very important contribution, but there are similar ideas floating, they have been floating all the time. Reasonable ideas, but reason is not part of the game.
Yes, thank you for this important comment. First of all, I do think that we need to address the psychological barriers and not only the reasonable and logical ones. If I have 2 minutes, I'll give an example of what we do. And we work on the ground. We work with Israelis and Palestinians day to day, not waiting to a messiah from outside. Although, personally, I'm waiting for a messiah, but not Israel. You know, the messiah is supposed to come on a donkey. So the donkey I see already all over the place, donkeys, and the messiah is. But anyway, so we talk to people, and we do all kinds of activities. And a few years ago, someone suggested me to take Israelis, and we work mainly with Israelis that are not convinced, okay, the non-convinced, people from Likud, Netanyahu's party, Shas party, parties that are not traditional members in the peace camp, so to speak. People that immigrated from the former Soviet Union and so on. And someone suggested me take them to the new Palestinian city of Rawabi. It's a city, now it's ready, although there's more construction. It's the only new city that was built in the West Bank, I mean, in the last, 70 years, at least. It's a modern city, high-tech, they have a very nice visitor center. Next time you go to the region, I recommend go to Rawabi. It's 10 minutes from Ramallah, 20 minutes from Jerusalem. And I said, why should I take Israelis there? I mean, what they see there is not the reality. It's, 3,000 Palestinians live there from an upper class. There's no such another city like this. If you go to Jenin or Hebron or Nablus or Ramallah, you see or refugee camps, you see Palestine. If you see the only place that you see, it's a bit fake. And people said, but take them once. Okay. So we organized a tour to Rawabi. People came back and said, maybe we should listen to you. Maybe we can make peace with the Palestinians. I said, how come? And the answer was, because we saw that they can change. It's from psychology. It has nothing to do with, they can change, because if they can move from a refugee camp mentality to a modern new city, and we see their shopping mall, so we see that there are people like us, modern, with, I don't know, there's no McDonald's, but there's something else, with those shopping malls and this visitor center and these sports facilities and buildings like buildings in Israel. And the name of the city, even Rawabi, it's like two small hills. We have an Israeli city with the same name in Hebrew. So it's even the name is similar. It's not named after Arafat or after, I don't know, a freedom fighter or a terrorist, whatever you want to call it. It's just two small mountains. And people, and since then we're taking Israelis to go to this place, and people come back. You know, they can change. And the notion that people can change, I'm giving it as an example, is one of the biggest psychological barriers. Because if you are convinced that obviously they have to change. I'm perfect. We are all perfect, of course, but they have to change. If you reach the conclusion that they can change, it removes one very high barrier. So, and there are more. I don't want to give a lecture now on psychological barriers, but there are several psychological barriers that we identified in our work, but more than that, they were identified in universities. There are researchers in universities in Israel that worked specifically on that. And we need to tackle those issues. That's why also I described you briefly our project on dealing with the past, on reconciliation. It's not about reason so much, but it's about emotions, feelings, fears, mainly about fears. And I agree that we need to deal with them, and the practical, reasonable solution on the table is not enough. I don't expect the international community to impose a solution. I don't think it will happen, and I'm not sure it's good if it will happen. I think it needs to come from us, Israelis and Palestinians. This is why we're working as an NGO trying to influence the governments. But I think international support is crucial, because it's too easy to give up, to say, well, we tried 20 years, other tries, this plan, this initiative, doesn't work. That's the easiest, to give up. And if we see, if people in Ohio, okay, will say, you know, it's a good cause. We need to, let's speak about it. How to reach peace? Is it possible? It is doable? It means that you didn't give up on this idea. If you didn't give up, how can I? I live there. So that's why I said earlier that your interest is helpful to us, because it prevents us from giving up. So I know that we're over time, so I would just finish with a request. And I'll say the following. We Israelis and Palestinians, and I believe we're the majorities on both sides, we are not willing to give up. And we will not give up. And my request is that as long as we don't give up on peace, don't give up on us. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and hope to see you a week from Thursday for the next speaker in this series. That was really good. Thank you very much. I love the line about the Messiah and the diamond. I'm going to steal that.